Hello everyone, I'm Lazy Grouse and today we're taking a look at the Chaos Dwarf Expanded Roster mod for Total War Warhammer 2. And I can highly recommend this mod if you want to play some Chaos Dwarfs but don't want to wait and hope for a Chaos Dwarf DLC in Warhammer 3 or just want to play an awesome mod in Warhammer 2. The base mod is only for custom battles however, so if you want to play them in campaign they have sub-mods and a number of overhaul mods that makes them available in campaign. But in this video I'm only going to go through how they work in OVN Lost Factions and SFO Grimhammer since those are the overhaul mods that I'm familiar with. But I will leave a link in the description to the mod page where you can download the mod and where you can find the list of overhaul mods with Chaos Dwarf submods. In the OVN Lost Factions they start in Ash Ridge Mountain in the Plains of Bones right next to Imric. And since the Chaos Dwarfs are known for their slavery in the lore, fittingly they have the Dark Elf slavery mechanic to supplement their economy. The slaves are also used as tributes for recruitment of higher tier units, some campaign bonuses, and at the end of the chain a new legendary lord. Slaves can be offered in 3 different tribute chains. Tribute for the Black Fortress gives Infernal Guards and bonuses to Infernal Guards, capacity and recruit rank for Infernal Castellan hero units, and finally the legendary lord Grashuath the Ashen. Slave Tribute to Zornagron gives you lower unit upkeep, public order, lord recruit rank, recruitment capacity. You also get both Centaur Renders, Varshnak's Horde, Acolytes of Hashut, Immortals and Annihilators, and the legendary lord Rykarth the Unbreakable. And Slave Tributes to Gorth the Cruel lowers upkeep for slave units, recruit rank for Hobgoblin Lords, capacity and recruit rank for Demon Smith, power reserves, a bunch of regiments of renown, and legendary lord Satan the Black. Their technology tree is basically the same as the Warriors of Chaos tree, but with the individual technologies changed to benefit the Chaos Dwarf units and settlements instead. In SFO Grimhammer, however, they don't have their own faction, but instead their roster is available to the Warriors of Chaos through 5 new building chains. So to get the Chaos Dwarf units, you just play as one of the Warriors of Chaos Lords as usual, and you recruit the Chaos Dwarf units like any other unit in the Warriors of Chaos roster, and there is no specific Chaos Dwarf mechanics or technologies added. And that's how they work in campaign in SFO Grimhammer and OVN Lost Factions, so let's take a look at the roster. So the Chaos Dwarfs have a huge roster with the expected sturdy Chaos Dwarf front line and awesome artillery pieces, but they also have some crazy monster units and even some cavalry. And since there's so many units, I will go through them fairly quickly. So their first legendary lord is Warrock Skullcrusher, and he's a decent melee combatant, but he also have a blunderbuss and it may be short range and low ammo, but he can deal great damage if he gets a good hit. He can also be mounted on a Bale Taurus or an Iron Demon. Next we have Rykarth the Unbreakable, and he's a pretty good combatant with a high melee attack and a bonus versus large, so he's specialized in killing monsters or anything large that he can catch up to really. And he is also unbreakable, so he will kill his target or die trying. Next we have Satan the Black, and stat-wise he's very similar to Rykarth. With a high melee attack and generally decent stats, he does have more damage than Rykarth however, but doesn't have the anti-large, and instead of being unbreakable, he's got perfect vigor. He can also be mounted on a Bale Taurus. And the final legendary lord, Grashuath the Ashen, is a caster lord with the lore of fire, and he's also very capable in combat with great stats for a caster. He can also be mounted on his unique Bale Taurus, Cinder Breath. Onto the generic lords, we have the Bull Centaur Lord, which is exactly what the name suggests. He's a Bull Centaur that is also a lord. The Hobgoblin Great Khan is a hybrid lord that is fairly good at dueling other characters, but can also just ride around and harass with his ranged attack. The Chaos Dwarf Overlord is also a hybrid unit, but less mobile than the Hobgoblin Khan. He is instead much tankier. He can be mounted on a Bale Taurus, but then he loses his ranged attack. The Hobgoblin Pelt Shaman is a caster lord that uses the lore of Little Wah, so he's essentially a Goblin Great Shaman on a wolf mount. And finally we have the Sorcerer Prophet, which is the other generic caster lord, and he's a Lord of Shadows caster, but he also has a ranged attack, and as a Chaos Dwarf he's also very tanky. The Chaos Dwarfs only have 3 different hero characters. They got the Hobgoblin Khan, Infernal Castellan, and the Demon Smiths. The Hobgoblin Khan is a pretty basic duelist character that you can put on a wolf mount. The Infernal Castellan is a pretty basic heavy armor melee character that you can mount on a Bull Chariot. And the Demon Smith is a caster character that comes with the Lore of Death, Fire or Metal, that comes as a foot variant, early statue variant, and statue variant where the Demon Smith is completely petrified, can't cast spells anymore, but instead debuffs enemies around him with slow. Now onto their infantry, which range from slave units that act as disposable meat shields to the very elite Chaos Dwarf Immortals. The meat shields are the Goblin Slaves, Hobgoblin Cutthroats and Orc Slaves, and they're all expendable infantry with low stats, and their main role is just to die on the front line. Hobgoblin Sneaky Gits are similar to the slave units as it's a very squishy and pretty weak infantry unit, but they're very sneaky and can stalk into the back line. And then we have their Chaos Dwarf Warriors, which is their standard frontline fighters that comes with either shield or great weapons. Infernal Guard is the more elite version of Chaos Dwarf Warriors, with the base variant coming with axe and shield, and they are great at holding the line. And if you want to spice up your front line a little, they also come as Fireglaive variants if you want them to have a shotgun instead of a shield, or Naphtha Bomb variants that are basically blasting charges. Acolytes of Ashut is a smaller unit of tanky Chaos Dwarfs that can deal good damage with a big anti-large bonus and a good AP. Blackhawk Mercenaries are a very offensive infantry unit that dumped its melee defense in favor of damage and only rely on their armor to survive. Zealot Berserkers are basically the Chaos Dwarf version of Slayers, unarmored, unbreakable damage dealers that will welcome a glorious death in combat. And finally the Immortals, which is the Chaos Dwarf elite infantry that is incredibly tanky but can still deal some decent damage. The ranged infantry is very similar to their Order Tide counterparts, as they got both crossbows and gunpowder, but they also have some heavier stuff. Hobgoblin Enforcers are the slave variant of ranged units that will die to anything that reaches them, including a light breeze. Chaos Dwarf Quarrelers are basically Dwarf Quarrelers, but with a Chaos Dwarf skin. Devastators are a gunpowder unit with a medium range shotgun. And Annihilators are basically Trollhammer torpedoes, but instead they shoot the missiles from the Hellstorm rocket batteries. Being a kind of dwarf, you'd think they wouldn't have cavalry, but since they have access to hobgoblins and from being twisted by chaos into bull centaurs, they do have some cavalry unlike their cousins. Hobgoblin Wolf Riders, their archer variants, and Hobhound Ravagers are basically Wolf Riders and slightly stronger Wolf Riders. They also have Bull Centaurs that come in 3 different tiers. There's the Bull Centaur Renders, which is the basic variant, Bull Centaur Spahal, which is the slightly stronger ones, and Bull Centaur Taurus, which is the strongest variant. And thanks to enslaving monsters and being chaos worshippers, they get access to some awesome monsters. They have Slave Ogres, which is a slave variant of Monsters Infantry. They have Lava Trolls, which are like basic trolls but with lava. They have Kadai Fireborn, which are some kind of Chaos Warrior fire elementals that debuff enemies around them with weakness to fire, which is pretty strong considering there's a lot of units with flaming attacks in the roster. The Great Taurus is a fire-themed Chaos Manticore with a breath attack. Colossus is a Chaos Dwarf mech that is easily my favorite model in this mod, it just looks so cool. They have Siege Giants, which is giants in heavy armor and these awesome weapons stapled to his hands. They have the Lamasu, which is a Manticore unit with a breath attack and the ability to cast Flamestorm, Enfeeble Foe and Honeyed Words, which summons a Feral Wyvern. And finally the Kadai Destroyer, which is a Gorgon with flaming attacks that gives enemies around him weakness to fire. And at last we have the Artillery, because what would the Chaos Dwarfs be without their Doomsday devices and war machines? First we have the Hobgoblin Bolt Thrower, which is a pretty basic ballista unit. They have the Death Shrieker Rocket Launcher, which is a cannon unit that shoots rockets similar to the Hellstorm rocket battery. They of course have a Hell Cannon, which makes sense since it's the only Chaos Dwarf unit in the base game. They have Magma Cannons, which is very similar to Flame Cannons, and like Flame Cannons deal great damage. And then we have the Iron Demon War Engine, which is a steam tank with almost no melee defense and a huge shotgun mounted on the front. And finally, we have the amazing looking huge mortar that is so big they need a train engine to move it, the Dreadquake Mortar. And it deals great damage, but it has a ridiculous 54-second reload time. And that's the expanded roster Chaos Dwarfs. I think the roster is awesome with some really cool units, so I can highly recommend this mod if you want to play some Chaos Dwarfs. But that's all for me, so thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!